Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Administrative Committee regular meeting at the end of the month. Today, March 24th, 2025. Next to me is Gina on this side, and on this side is Drew. Happy to be here.
Indeed.
All right, let's get going, shall we? All right. First item on the agenda is to approve the Administrative Committee meeting minutes from February 24th, 2025. Anything to bring back up?
No, they look good.
Look good to me.
All right, let's keep moving along. Item number 2 is a request for a waiver for on-premise consumption within 300 feet of a school or church. Lori, hello.
Hi. So Drew and Jolena Owen have purchased 215 South Main Street. It's the previous location of Coulter's Creek. They are putting in a cooperative pop-up business, and they are in the process of applying for the alcohol license for the state and the county. And as you are probably aware, Idaho Code prohibits the on-premise consumption within 300 feet of a church, public school, and place of worship. And it is within 300 feet of the United Church of Moscow, the southeast corner of Jackson and First. The church did submit a support letter. And I thought I would mention that the waiver goes with the license. It doesn't go with the location. That's why, even though there was previous alcohol served at this location, that's why this is before you. Jolena and Owen are in the audience if you have questions for them, but I am also here to field anything you have.
Welcome. We're excited, by the way. Congratulations. I don't have any questions. The letter was attached in our packet from the church, and they were supportive. And I feel like that clearly matters with these sort of things, as we reviewed even last week in Public Works, or 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I don't have any questions or issues.
And correct me if I'm wrong, kind of deviating just for a minute. Last time we met, we did approve for something.
The East Side Cinemas,
East
or
Side.
Village Center.
Yeah,
or something. Yes.
Village Cinema. And I know there's business plans and things are different but it's kind of on the same vein of what we're doing. And I got a comment of why we didn't talk about it, just in passing, not email, by someone, why didn't we talk about it in council? And I explained it. So there wasn't a concern, but the overall thing was, this is very straightforward, but I think that someone was asking, like, well, you can also watch during this meeting as well.
Sure.
For recording. So.
Gina?
My question was going to be what happened to the previous situation. It happened long enough ago that I didn't remember approving everything then. But I think it's an easy one.
Yeah.
In my mind, I think we should forward it to council with our recommendation to approve.
Yeah, nice. And I feel like, this is kind of one of the exciting things about city government is the nuance here, because I would imagine that most people will just say, oh, this place serves beer and wine because the old place served beer and wine, right? And so they probably won't really make the connection that it has to go through this process as well, right? So, but it's kind of neat to be able to know that it does go through this vetting process. And I second Gina's comment.
Your mic started working too.
Yes, I just heard that chime in. Yeah. We have considered the applicant's request for City Council to waive the prohibition from selling alcohol for on-premise consumption within 300 feet of any church, school, or any other place of worship, and we recommend approval of this waiver.
Would you like to be on consent or regular?
You want to go
Regular?
Well,
We didn't do regular with the east side.
That's true. And my only reason is based off that conversation, but yeah.
We can certainly do it regular. I can present it for Lori so she can
I think
do her
Lori should
clerkly
present it.
duties.
Yeah. I guess if we do want to put it on regular, I think with the nuance of it being downtown, I don't know if that changes.
I'm going to be the only one going consent here, I think.
I'm fine with
it's
consent.
totally okay to put it on consent because there are enough of us already here I think interested parties could actually watch it on recording.
Yeah, no,
So
I'm fine with consent.
I'm calling it the consent,
Okay.
but I'm only one.
No, you're two. I'm two.
Okay, two.
I'm one.
Sweet.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Vote
And
stands.
if you want to pull it off, then
I can always pull if I want.
Okay, all right, thank
That's
you.
true.
cool.
That's
Thank
true.
you.
Can pull it.
Awesome. Thanks, Lily. Congratulations, Drew. Was it Drew and
Jolene,
Jolene?
yeah.
Congratulations. Yeah. Item number 3, consideration of the dissolution of the Moscow Pathways Commission. Hi, David.
Hi there. Thank you for having me today, this afternoon. So, kind of a sad day.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
But
the Moscow Pathway Commission can trace their roots back to 1991 with the Linear Park Task Force. They were tasked with developing a preliminary linear park plan for our community. In 2001, this was converted over to the Paradise Path Task Force. That really ran with it. They developed a comprehensive linear pathway system citywide and a regional connectivity. This culminated in a connection between the western and our eastern boundaries of the city of Moscow. And so the Paradise Task Force was reevaluated in 2013. A couple options there that council had considered at that time. But in 2015, the task force was formally went forward as the Moscow Pathways Commission. Making 2 decades of volunteer efforts in shaping the city's pathway network and laying out the groundwork for future expansions. Some of the projects they had completed in that time since 2015, we've got the Highway 8 underpass, the Blackbird Station. They were also one of the I guess the folks that came to the city saying, hey, the pathway down by now Republic on Main is really dark. And so that kind of got us going on the pathway lighting project as well. So however, the Pathways Commission has been facing some ongoing challenges with identifying substantive topics for our regular meetings. With no major pathway improvement projects on the horizon, the Commission we've been lacking meaningful topics for our regular meetings. And so the past few years, we've really been focusing more on the public outreach side of things. We've got our Bike to Work Day, pedestrian annual pedestrian tour and the annual bike tour. Frankly, the turnout for these have been quite low. And so that's why we're here before you today. On February 11th, 2025, during the regular meeting of the Pathways Commission, they recommended the following motion. Given the pressures on the city budget, and that the charter of the Moscow Pathways Commission is largely redundant with those of the Transportation Commission and the Parks and Recreation Commission, the Moscow Pathway Commission recommends that it be dissolved. This recommendation does acknowledge the Commission's contributions to the Moscow Pathways system over the, call it 30 years, since we had the Linear Pathways Task Force, but recognizing the responsibilities may now be more effectively addressed with other city commissions. There's a lot of overlap between the Transportation and the Parks and Recreation Commission. And so with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, I'll go first. So 2024, I was on this commission and learned a lot about it. I think anyone in Moscow who doesn't acknowledge that we have great pathways would be crazy.
Right.
And it's gone to a lot of the work, as you've kind of noted, David. But also what I've kind of noticed last year, there's not a lot of projects kind of queued up, and attendance and a variety of things. And I think this has been well thought out from city staff perspective, and, past president here. And I just want to also just put, just for sake of conversation and for the public record, that it doesn't mean that if grant money or other things are secured that a task force can't be enabled, but there are lots of other talented people through transportation, Parks and Rec that can tackle a problem like this. But it's not that things haven't been achieved by this. It's just currently and for the foreseeable future, I don't see that there's a big need for it. So.
I think I remember getting assigned as a new counselor to the Pathways Commission. And I remember thinking, Tanya was like the Energizer Bunny that you just never stopped. The chair, Tanya Dennison. And so it's kind of sad. I have real mixed emotions here. I feel very strongly about no more meetings for meeting's sake. However, and I think that nobody needs to feel guilty about me missing a meeting or not being able to make a meeting that really doesn't have a project or something to be discussed and executed during those meetings. So I think it's the right thing to do. It's the season. the end of the Pathways Commission, and I'm sad about it, but I do know that some of these people, like our Energizer Bunny, Tanya, have been assigned to signed up for some other commissions, and that's a good thing. Get those committed citizens into some great spots, and it's sad, but I think it's the right decision.
Yeah, and I echo both Drew and Gina and I appreciate kind of the thoughtfulness to arrive at this conclusion, right? That clearly this wasn't just offhand. This wasn't just like, I feel like we should do this. It's kind of like looking at where we're at and where we've been, and and a way to move forward. But a way to move forward is going to be a pivot, right? And I think that there's definitely. I'm really glad to know that both kind of the work that the Pathways Commission has done, and it can be assumed within various aspects in the Transportation Commission and the Parks and Rec, and the various people that have been on that commission can also continue to utilize their community, utilize their services to the community. So, and so I appreciate you bringing this to us. Thank you, David. So we have received the request. Anything else to say,
Nope, mine.
Regina?
Thank you.
Yeah. We've received the request from the Moscow Pathways Commission to dissolve and recommend approval of the proposed ordinance to repeal Moscow City Code Title III, Chapter 14. I'm inclined to think we should maybe bring this to full council. I don't know.
It has to, because it's an ordinance, so
Okay.
it'll have to be on the regular agenda for the full council's consideration.
Okay, good. Well,
Sorry, David, you have to be there. Yeah.
Thank you for your time this afternoon. I appreciate
yeah,
it.
thank you, David.
Thanks, David.
Item number 4.
Just to confirm, the committee is recommending approval of the
Yes.
Yes.
action. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Item number 4, Public Avenue Corridor Safety Improvements, bid results and funding contribution. Hello, Scott.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Scott.
So bringing this project back again, we've been talking about this project off and on since about 2019. So originally we had applied for this project January of 2019. This is part of the LTAX grants that they provide. This is the Local Highway Safety Improvement Program, and this program is one of the ones that is based upon safety. So it's usually associated with some type of crash and safety that can be added to the corridor to help reduce future crashes and provide pedestrian safety and everything. So we'll go through a quick retouch on history on this one. So this is up there on Public Avenue between Polk and Lincoln. This is approximately 1,100-foot corridor. Currently, it's 12-foot lanes with 1-foot shoulders. It's really just ditches on the sides. This is kind of what the look is out there. This area was the high number of angle road departure crashes. There was actually a fatality out there. Really not a lot for pedestrian facilities. So at the time, the proposed solution was to rebuild the roadway section to add bike lanes, green strips, sidewalks, curb and gutter, kind of bring it more to that urban type roadway section. Planning on installing a concrete splitter island up at Polk and Public at the intersection, and then installing, at that time, some storm sewer system. We're not sure how much was going to be necessary. We knew we were filling in the ditch line and everything. And then also there was discussion of realigning with, where it ties in with F Street over there. So I had this conceptual put together from the consulting engineers to kind of give an idea of what is proposed for it. So starting on the west side here, that's where we're talking about adding the traffic splitter island, realigning the intersection up here. Then you can kind of see the addition of the curb gutter sidewalks and sides, the bike lanes. This kind of brings it up more to our typical collector type roadway. And essentially going from Polk up to Lincoln with this portion. When we originally had looked at applying, we had applied all the way up to Orchard, but the funding couldn't carry it all the way up there at that point. So a little more on it. Last September, we had come to committee and council to talk about the additional funding necessary for putting the project out to bid. The difference from 2019 to 2024 had changed from a construction estimate of $600,000 to, at the time, last fall, construction estimate of $1.36 million. And that at the time was the need for another $399,000 city contribution to just have it so they could put it out to bid. ITD did put this out to bid. This is one of the projects that is ran and controlled by Idaho Transportation Department. So they put this one out to bid in January, got bid results in February 25th. Of that, 5 had bid on this with bid results of the $1,814,999.99 up to $2,455,697.51. So the bids themselves were in a tighter range for where they're at. Unfortunately, is still a lot higher than we were expecting. When we had worked with a consultant on the engineer's estimate at the time, we had double checked it with some of the numbers we had from last fall and the previous spring. Seemed like it was in the right area. But now with the latest bid results and knowing that this is also federal funds as opposed to local funds, which there's a lot more associated with that, and there's escalation to it because of the additional paperwork, the Davis-Bacon wages, the Buy American. I mean, there's a lot of different regulations that go with federal funds. So we're coming to with you now, just kind of stepping through the funding history on this a little bit. So the original scope of the project was more of just a widening project. We had the bike lanes, curb and gutter, sidewalk. We weren't doing the full road reconstruction, and the storm drain system itself too wasn't to the level that it needed to be once we went through the full design, because the entire area to the east drains to this basin, which then means all the drain pipe, manholes, catch basins, they all got to be a much larger size. So it's adding up. And with the larger pipe and the larger network then becomes a larger excavation through the roadway, which while you're already doing that, starts making sense to not just have little narrow areas that you're not touching during excavation, and instead just to rebuild everything while you're there. In the original roadway section out there is more of the old county standard that had been originally adopted over the years as the city continued to expand. It hadn't really been improved. So
That's way of saying it's not great. Just kidding, in my opinion.
up to date so far, originally with the state local design agreement back in 2019, the city had to front $3,000 to get the project going. Then during the whole design process, the city paid but was reimbursed, and so the city only had to fund the 7.34%, which is typical with any of the federal funding type projects, which added up to about that $9,000. Then what we talked about last fall was before it went to bid with the addition of the scope, which the scope addition on this project had been switching to doing the full road reconstruction through the corridor, plus the full storm system, which between the two, with the bid numbers that we have now, added about $800,000 worth of additional scope, which is something the city would have to do eventually if it was a separate project outside of the safety program. Yeah. But what the city is in need of, or what LTAC is in need of now, is a additional funding contribution of $450,763, which would put the city's total contribution up to that $862,000. But kind of put it in perspective too, originally the project at a total price of $880,000, which included design, construction, consultants, everything. Now we're at $2.4 million for everything, of which with the contribution, the city is still only at about 36% of the total cost. And that includes that additional scope of work that we would have had to have done with a future project anyways. And we do have in the capital improvement plan to do additional stormwater work upstream of this, further east into the neighborhood and up to the northeast reservoir and everything for the storm drain that has to come out of that and stuff. So staff's recommendation is providing LTAC a letter of support of acceptance for the bid from Knife River Corporation and authorizing $450,763 of additional funding contribution, or provide staff further direction. Any questions?
So this particular project is obviously near and dear, I guess, to the city's heart, because if you tell you it happened in 2014, was a city employee at the time. So Chris Papanaw was the individual that died as a result of an automobile accident on this roadway stretch. We back in September, we understood that there was a potential that we could see increased cost. And LELTAC was providing a number relatively close to this that was in far in excess of what the engineer of record on the project was estimating. But there are some premiums, I think, that's just having a state administered project, you end up with a little bit higher bid. So we knew it was a potential that we could end up here. And we talked about that in September when we allocated the additional $300,000 to the project. At this point, I think it's really, there were two choices. There's two choices. If we don't want to proceed with the project and provide the additional funding, then we're going to have to reimburse LTAC for the design work, about $200,000, and we'll have a nice shiny set of plans, but we won't have anything actually completed. And this is an area, it has been an area of significant injuries and a fatality accident that I think the city should address. We were fortunate enough at the end of the last fiscal year to have some accumulation with some of our holdbacks, and the emergency radio project being about $1.5 million less than we had anticipated, that we were able to allocate and transfer some additional funds to the capital fund. So we are in a position to be able to absorb this additional $450,000 and to not disrupt any other projects that we currently have programmed here this upcoming 2 years. So we do think we're in a good position to be able to fund this.
So either way, we're spending $200,000 as we've talked about, right? We can spend basically another $250 to actually get something complete. It's kind of the moral of the story.
I mean, we'd get the $390 we've contributed back,
Oh,
less
I
the
guess.
$200,000.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we will have expended $200,000 for plans that we don't have the ability to fully fund on our own. You know, I think as Scott indicated, there's $1.5 million of federal funding going into this project, in addition to the $860,000 of local funds. So we really are paying a smaller percentage, and I do think it's in the city's best interest to take advantage of the federal funding that's currently available.
Well, and LTAC too, over this time has gone up from their portion, which was originally about 800,000 to now that 1.5 million. So they've tossed in more as well, because this program typically has a cap to it, but they've been trying to get these projects pushed through.
Yeah, and I know you came here a couple of times and answered questions, but I just want to just clarify, because you've done a really good job like addressing everything. It's really unfortunate just where the price is, everything that we can't connect to Orchard. That's totally understandable. We know that maybe further down the line, finding a way to make that happen, at least on one side of the street, I think that's great. But we know when and if funds come available. So there's that question mark. But in terms of what we're doing with stormwater on that side of connecting everything to, and I know you've answered my question before, so I apologize, but everything connecting to Orchard, it's going to be either we're going to be able to tie into it or it's being done all at once. Is that correct?
Yeah, the basin extends further up all the way pretty much to Orchard. So all the neighborhoods to the north and south, all the way back towards like Rotary Park, that whole neighborhood down below there. I mean, everything in that entire basin drains down to that area. So the storm pipe, and this is going to be a 24-inch pipe, which is a decent sized storm pipe that's coming through. And it's a lot more expensive than installing your typical 8 or 12-inch.
Yeah. So regardless, it's going to be a great thing. And then it basically just getting pedestrians in the future. And so we're making all the improvements just for the pedestrians. There's just going to be a slight little chunk, but overall much safer. And it's that area of town's expanding. So I'm all for it. So.
I love the realignment of that terrible intersection that just for so many years I have avoided, because I hate that intersection. So I appreciate that, first of all. Mr. Belknap, regarding the additional funds that we need to put in, you said that this was holdbacks or what was left at the end of the year, correct? So it's not affecting any programs this year. It's not affecting any future plans we have. It is money that we held back, and it is basically unrestricted.
Yeah, there are one-time budgetary savings, either due to savings of other projects, primarily the emergency radio project that was substantially less than what we anticipated, or there were one-time savings from vacant positions. Most often, that's been our police officer position been vacant. So they're kind of one-time savings that we allocate to capital for one-time use, for one-time expense, not for ongoing recurring expenses. So we did have some additional funds that we could allocate to capital at the end of the last fiscal year. And so we are in a position to be able to fund this project.
Beautiful. That's what I needed you to say, and what I wanted someone out there to hear. And I wanted it to be very clear that this is a very good investment of those dollars. The impact is gigantic. So thank you for hanging on since 2019 too.
Can I ask one follow-up question that Gina prompted? So, but with this though, so on other road projects that we've been doing, we've seen a significant cost in our bids that we've anticipated, right?
We've seen a leveling this year. So most all of the city bid have been either under estimate or right around or near estimate. So I think we are seeing a plateauing of our local construction cost. I do believe you still pay a premium when it is a state bid and
for
administered
100%.
project. Which is, I think, what we saw here. But for our bids, pretty much every bid that we've done, other than the slurry seal, I think that was the one bid this year that was slightly above estimate. But all of our other heavy construction, heavy civil work projects were coming in at or well below the estimate. So we do have some savings. For example, the White Avenue project was, I think, it was almost 100,000 underneath estimate this year. So there's some savings even on projects we were planning to do this year. We had 2 projects on Mountain View that we anticipated happening this year that were TAP. Transportation Alternatives Program projects. Those are going to be delayed a year. So we have appropriation and funding that then we essentially can allocate to this project for this year as well.
Excellent.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, and to that end, and just to kind of echo what my colleagues have said is, and per the recommendation, the idea of pulling it all back, holding on to, the shiny plans, I think you described them, right? And then waiting to see if things get cheaper is just, I don't think, a sensible decision. So,
Well, and LTAC won't fund it. So we'll be
Right.
entirely on our own
Right.
because we get to this point, we don't award the project and we don't provide our local match. They won't look at the project again. So this is a one-time opportunity. The one thing I'm not sure if Scott mentioned, we do need to provide LTAC a letter of support by the end of this week. So, and then we'll take it to council. We do have a 5th Monday this month, so the next council meeting, I think, is the 7th. And so we will have largely committed by that point, but that's the timeline we're on right now.
We've done that before.
We have.
It's,
You guys are great. Like this is, do it.
this is such a good thing. Yeah.
Slam dunk.
We will probably put this on regular agenda.
Yes.
on
Yeah,
the 7th.
great.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you, Scott. All right, item number 5. Alley west of Main Street sewer. The bid results and contract award with Bob. Bob?
So glamorous.
Mhm.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Bob.
I'm here today to bring to you the bid results and the contract award for the last CIP project that I have from this design bidding season. So really excited to get into the construction season and see some of this stuff get turned into reality. Since the name is a little complicated and misleading, I wanted to give everybody an idea of what project we were talking about. So this is Main Street, Jackson Street parking lot. And so this is the alley in between. This would be Friendship Square. The project essentially is to start at this manhole. We'll replace this manhole and then replace the sewer line in the exact same position all the way down just to this manhole down at 6th Street. The project also includes a couple of catch basins that will be in the way of excavation, so we'll need to remove those catch basins. We'll reinstall those catch basins with brand new infrastructure. So couple important points that have been either in the contract or in the specifications are that we're restricting the project to 60 working days. So that means that once they start working, they can't. It starts a clock where they have 60 days to complete the project before liquidated damages start kicking in. The performance period for the project, we went back and forth on whether to try to restrict this project to the typical window where after school gets out and before school gets back in with the university. That would have eaten up pretty much the entire 60 working day period. And this is an area of town that it's busy. It's going to be busy whether we start. It's going to be busy whether we start before the students leave. It's going to be busy all summer. It's going to be an impact regardless of how we try to fit this into the construction season. So in an effort to open up that construction window, maybe encourage some contractors that maybe wouldn't have been able to bid if we had stuck to that strict window, we opened it up and to pretty much full summer. The plans include a phased closure of the Jackson Street parking lot. So they'll have to close and open bays of that Jackson Street parking lot as they're able to. There'll just be times where some of those bays will have to be closed. And that was in the construction drawings and is part of the contract. In addition to that, a lot of pedestrian traffic in the area. So any excavations that are going to be left overnight, in addition to being coned off like we normally do, surrounded by construction fence, they are going to be required to place steel plates over any open excavation at night. So the bids for this project were opened on March 4th. We received 7 bids, which is again a lot for what we had seen last construction season. The bids ranged from $367,000 to $552,000. Pretty wide range. The estimate after design was $472,000 in that range. And the budget for the project was $381,000. That was what we had in the CIP. The low bid for the project was, of course, the $366,913.32. Staff's recommendation is that we accept the bid from Devout Excavation, who we haven't got the opportunity to work with yet, but we've had a lot of luck with some of the other contractors that we've been able to bring into the area, and so hopefully this works out as well. But our recommendation is to award the contract to Devout Excavation and authorize staff to approve change orders with up to 10% of the original contract.
Where are they coming out of? Where?
Desmet.
That's okay. Yep.
Seems like they've moved back and forth between Desmet and Plummer, looking into their history and all their paperwork. So.
Thriving metropolis of Desmet.
Yeah.
I appreciate as much as it feels like we're taking up the whole summer with it. I appreciate the 60-day thing because, but I also, you miss homecoming, which is when we move the farmer's market to that spot, and so it's important. I get the decision process and it's hard to do, but I think this is probably the best thing. Maybe they can get it done really quick and then we won't remember it by homecoming. But I do think that it looks good. I love that it came in below what we thought, and it's good.
Yeah. Just to piggyback kind of on that, but a little bit of a different direction here. Bob, what would you recommend, or how would you recommend we describe the necessity of this project to people that might be angry of certain bays of that parking lot or the nuance of that alleyway? We can say that a sewer is being replaced, but yeah, like what might be something, or how might we relate to the community that this impacts them, or at least impacts the downtown businesses' ability to function in a sanitary way, just because all they're going to see is construction and nuance in a very,
Parking.
and less parking. Like,
Yeah.
And it's one. So this is a project that was brought to us through through requests from the operations side of Public Works.
Okay.
So this is a stretch of pipe that is deteriorating, is a backup problem, and requires regular flushing. So the obvious benefit is cost savings and being able to save those resources that are currently going towards having to go out and regularly maintain and flush this line, to now being able to, it's more like it being more like an annual, maybe every 5-year flushing.
Okay.
With brand new SDR 35.
okay, thanks.
Is there a difference in diameter, or any kind of an upgrade kind of a thing?
No, this the current pipe is an 8-inch pipe. We think there's sections of it that we can't camera.
Yep.
Because of the deterioration of the pipe. There are some of the outlets at the manholes that measure at 6. Some of them measure at 8. We're going to replace it with all 8-inch pipe. This section has been looked at through our 2011 sewer comp plan, and it isn't expected to become a capacity issue in the future, even with some additional build out. So there isn't a good reason to upsize the pipe. However, the capacity of the pipe will be increased because we will be just the change in material. We'll be going from clay pipe to an SDR 35, which flows better. It's a smoother pipe.
Okay,
So
good.
Just to
Tyler,
flesh out a
yeah.
little bit more, as Bob had indicated, it was
get it.
operations staff that brought this forward. This hasn't been a traditional and long-term problem line for us. We have the large jet truck, which is expensive vehicle to run, that we have to mobilize. There are a few spots that are trouble spots. We have to hit them far more routinely. As you can imagine, we have a pretty active fats, oils, and grease program, and that's because restaurants are big generators of fats, oils, and grease, and this line has been one of our biggest problems. 6th Street
Makes sense.
we have to access on 6th Street. And so in addition, we have traffic concerns
right.
because we have to be out there routinely on 6th Street with the jet truck, where we've got a busy street. We're causing a disruption to traffic, and it's a safety concern for our staff. And so having to be out there as frequently as we're out there, as Bob mentioned, with the new infrastructure installed correctly, and then with the FOG program in particular, Casa Lopez just this last year put a big investment into appropriate fats, oils, and grease separator for their facility. As part of the fats, oils, and grease program, they were great to work with, and really they made a big personal a big business investment in that process. So with some of those improvements, we can get to a very routine, which is usually a 3 to 5 year rotation, rather than at times we've been out to this line. We're at least monthly. We're out to this line. So just the cost savings over time will be pretty significant for
Okay,
operations.
And I guess to that end, since you brought it up, does this or will this impact any sort of the businesses that are Main Street facing but still connected to that line? Like, will you have to shut off water or anything to any of those businesses during this project?
no, they'll be able to operate as normal operations. The contractor, there's a specific line item where the contractor will be required to bypass the existing flow. So,
Their construction processes for these that will be utilized in order to keep all businesses in service throughout the project.
Okay, great. Thank you, Drew. Sorry we monopolized those questions there.
No, you're fine. You're asking questions I wanted to ask, so that's good. So like most things, just want to make sure that when the work's being done, have the business already been contacted, or will be contacted when they get closer to
yes, this project, it's going to be a very visible project, and so we'll be ramping up our public information for this project, and a little greater from what we do a lot of other projects. But door knockers, pamphlets, things like that. A lot of those buildings are going to be tough to notify. But yep, we go do neighborhood letters and all that stuff. So that will be done. Yeah.
And no, and I think that's great. And overall, kind of circling back to Bryce's question, is it's just better to the end user. They might not see the service, but it's just going to be better to help the city maintain their services. Which, if no one thinks about sewer till it doesn't work, right? And so this is going to make sure that it works. So it's not a fun project, but it's necessary. So
Yeah, these ones aren't glamorous,
Yeah.
but it's a lot less glamorous when it quits working.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I guess also to that end, and Gina had mentioned this as well, with the timeline that you presented is pretty much mostly all of market season, and so I'm curious if there's been any conversation with Amanda about either kind of just knowing that this project's coming down the line, or just how that might affect certain the market.
We did try to miss the times when market needs to be on the in the Jackson Street parking lot. So we haven't notified Amanda yet, but she will be notified as well.
Other questions?
And this isn't going to completely remove the parking on
Right.
And
Staging.
it's going to be phased. So we'll lose 2 bays, and then one additional bay will get closed down as another one opens up, and as we're out. So some of that parking will still be available, and for the most part, pedestrian traffic will still be able to go from Jackson Street to Main Street. But
Didn't we do, I'm flashing back to maybe a parking lot repaving that we did for a while that impacted some of these things. And we are a flexible community. We learn how to get where we want to go in other ways if we can. And it is an impact, but it is also an improvement. So best of both worlds. I think it's good.
it's these ones are tough because when everything's all said and done, it's you aren't going to see anything new, and so that's going to be the difficult part of this. But
The worms will know, but
The flow. Any other questions or comments? Cool. Tyler, thanks for jumping up as well.
Thanks.
I recommend the acceptance of the bid from Devout Excavation LLC and award the contract in the amount of $366,913.32 and authorize staff approval of construction change orders in an amount not to exceed 10% of the contract amount.
Here.
Great. Do you want
Would you like that on consent?
consent?
Consent. Sounds great.
I like consent for this one.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Bob, thank you. Thank you
Thank you.
for
Fun.
addressing all of our questions. Yeah. Item number 6, proposed City of Moscow social media policy. Bill and Corey, hello.
Thank you.
Corey on this side of things.
Corey.
Yeah,
I know.
Love it. Yeah.
It's out from behind the camera.
Yeah.
As the council's aware, the city does use social media as a tool to enhance communications with the public about city programs and activities. We've never had a formal social media policy, and recently I think we've identified the need that we'd like to have one established. It provides the framework for the operations of the social media channels, who can post, what has to be reviewed, what permissions have to be obtained. So it does establish those standard procedures and protocols for the use of social media. It would also adopt a notice and use policy statement that we would post on all of our social media channels just to advise users and consumers of that information, of the terms of service. It would also establish standards for the city's use of tagging for promoting outside organizations, businesses, individuals, or events, just to kind of constrain that to those that are either participating in any specific program, city-sponsored program or activity. It could be vendors that are participating in the market, but just to make it clearer who we tag and who we don't, just so we don't get into a, why are you advertising my business? Well, it might be tagging host sites for Art Walk or vendors at the market because they are participants in the city's programs or events. But we aren't out there to promote and advertise, all other businesses in the community, but just to provide some guidelines there. It also would provide established standards and criteria for the removal of comments. So if a city is allowing public comments on their posts, then the city is creating a limited public forum. And so there are free speech rights that accompany that. And so really, unless it is, something, it's, very limited criteria underneath the policy, unless that comment was vulgar, violent, or threatening language, content or language that promotes, fosters, or perpetuates discrimination of any kind, conduct or encouragement of legal activity, or content that violates legal intellectual property rights or interests of other parties, essentially would be the only limited circumstances in which the city could moderate or could remove comments. And then if you're going to do that, you need to provide an opportunity for the commenter to appeal that removal of that content. And so this would establish in that standard in that process, just so we're making sure that we are following that and that we are protecting everybody's rights when the city creates that limited public forum.
Can I chime in on that?
Yeah.
So, and I think I've noticed, if I'm correct, for all of our avid viewers near and far away on YouTube, I think you do have comments turned off, right?
Correct.
And so hypothetically, or if and when and how this passes, comments turn on, right? Am I to understand that with YouTube, or is that?
So the city will evaluate when and where we would allow comments. So there are probably four main, like if looking at Facebook, there are four main Facebook channels. You got the main city, police department, farmers market, community events, and the arts department. Okay. So right now on the city's main channel and on the police department's Facebook feeds, we do not allow comments.
Say that again for me, Bill. I'm sorry.
We do not allow comments on the city's main Facebook feed and the police department.
Okay.
Arts channel does not allow comments currently, but the only one that does is the farmers market community events that allows comments.
Great. And so to that end, is there the prospect of opening up comments for those three other?
Those will be evaluated. That's not the intent of the policy.
Okay.
The intent of the policy is if a department or a channel wishes to allow comments, you have to allow that in this fashion. You cannot block people. You cannot remove unless it violates the terms of use. And if you remove anything, you have to provide this opportunity for an administrative review for an appeal process there. So that's just a best practice for moderation of comments. So we're not making any decisions about whether we're going to allow or not, just setting the framework for if comments are allowed. This is how it has to be administered.
But you can, each page can determine beforehand, like in this case.
Correct.
like
We have reviewed and authorized those who wish to allow comments.
Gotcha.
Correct.
Or not.
Or not.
Yeah.
And in this process, remind me, as it relates to the social media channels of city employees, or just if you're posting, this policy applies, or if, let's say in my capacity or our capacity as city councilors, we post something on an Instagram feed, does that stay within the bounds of this policy?
So this is only for those posts made on behalf of the city as an employee through the city's official channels.
Got it.
So
Got it.
individuals' personal use of their personal accounts is not regulated by this.
Okay, great. Just wanted to clarify that.
There is a prohibition against using personal channels for city business in this policy.
Right. Okay.
I think it's important. I think it's important. We all need to be able to voice our opinions and then appeal it if it gets denied. But I think it's important that it's there and is a structure that we can work within.
And Corey, are you going to be the main person, you and Bill, to monitor this or make those decisions?
Yeah, for the channels that do have comments on.
Okay. Drew?
No, it's pretty straightforward. We talked about it a
Exactly.
couple weeks ago. So yeah, I
Yep.
think it's, I think it's a good thing. Policies are good.
Yeah. And we have had, the Arts Commission has been debating whether they want to allow comments or not. And I think they really want to have kind of clear guidelines and rules about if there are rules about tagging. So this just gives that framework for all the various departments that are utilizing social media to have a framework and standard procedures and protocols that they're following just to help protect them as well.
And would it set up, I would imagine it also sets up a precedent that if other departments wanted to start utilizing social media, they will follow the same framework.
Correct. Yeah, we would have to review, they'd have to request, we'd have to approve it,
Right.
because we don't want to dilute the messaging too much. There are unique audiences for different
Sure.
different programs and activities the city engages, but we obviously don't want to dilute it too much. So we'd be
Right.
reviewing that.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I think I'd say we approve that for
Okay,
sure.
we're going to recommend,
approval.
perfect, proposed social media policy and associated resolution. So thank you.
As
Corey.
exciting as this is, would you like this on consent or regular? It's a resolution, so it can go on
Oh,
consent.
it's not an ordinance. I say consent. I love consent agenda.
Consent?
Okay. Good. Yeah,
All right.
I consent to the consent.
Thank you.
Anything else?
So agreeable.
This meeting is now adjourned, 4:50. Thank you, everybody.
you.
Thank you.
Good job, Chair.
Thanks.